homemade salsa today. I have all these great fresh ingredients, and what better way to use them up as to make a nice homemade salsa. This might be a little bit different than the usual way where I tell you certain recipes or certain quantities, because what the thing is with salsa is that even before I started more serious canning, I was one of those persons who would take their favorite salsa and put it in a bottle and process it and water bath can it. And I have since learned that that's a very unsafe thing to do. So now I do follow a scientifically tested, safe recipe for canning my salsa. I do recommend that you do the same. Take your favorite salsa recipe, compare it to the ones that are out there. There's lots of recipes. The Bernardin has some as well. The National Center for Home Food Preservation has lots of recipes there as well. It's really important to find that recipe that is similar to the one you make, but is scientifically tested, and then you have to make that switch over to that new recipe. It's the only way to safely preserve your salsa. I do suggest that if you've never water bath canned before, that you do check out my other vlog. I do have a vlog on water bath canning, which is the method we're going to be using for preserving our salsa. There's also one with pressure canning. I really try to keep these videos, vlogs, kind of short. It's more for information, and if you're new to canning, I really do suggest that you check out those vlogs because there's a lot more important details in those as well. A few things that are important to know when you are making your salsa. You'll see that some recipes ask for vinegar and some ask for lemon juice. So don't substitute those ingredients one for the other. If you are using your vinegar, it has to be your 5% vinegar. And if it is calling for lemon juice, it needs to be your bottled lemon juice. You can't use fresh squeezed lemons because the acidity in the fresh lemons is can vary from lemon to lemon. So you need to use the bottled lemon juice. When it comes to your peppers, you need to use nice, high quality, unblemished peppers. So these are bell peppers. Now when you're talking about your peppers, you can switch your red for your green, you can add the yellow, the orange. So these peppers you can kind of play around with. Don't play around with the quantities that it calls for, but you can switch around the different varieties if you have a favorite one. One thing that you cannot switch though when you're talking about peppers is that if, let's say the recipe says like 3 red bell peppers or 3 green bell peppers, you can't switch your bell peppers for your jalapeno peppers. So you really have to stay within the same variety of pepper to make those switches. It'll affect the acidity of the final product. One thing that you can do if you're a little bit concerned about the tartness of the vinegar or the lemon juice is you can add sugar. That's one of those things that you can add inside of your recipe. One thing that can be adjusted somewhat are certain spices that are in your salsa as well. So when it comes to your black pepper, your salt, your oregano leaves, your cumin, your pickling spice, your red hot pepper flakes. So those are certain spices that you can either increase, decrease, put in, leave out. Those spices are optional. So those are pretty much the only spices that you can play around with and still preserve the safeness and the acidity of your salsa. And it's the same thing for your onions. You can switch out your red onions, your yellow onions, or your white onions if you have a specific preference for what type of onion. You can choose the onion that you prefer. Just make sure that, once again, that you don't change the quantities. It's when we're talking about a lot of these things, it's the quantities and the proportions to your low acids and your high acids that are really important. So remember, with all this being said, now that you know better, you should be doing better, especially when it comes to salsa. Now what I need to be doing is removing the skins from all of my tomatoes and prepping all my vegetables and chopping them up. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is, like I said, is to remove the skins off of the tomatoes. So we're going to start by thoroughly washing our tomatoes. And then you're going to take a sharp knife and score the underneath of each tomato. Making this X on the tomato is going to make it easier to remove the skins. And I've chosen to use the Roma tomato. It's a fleshier tomato, and I think it's going to make a thicker salsa. It's the first time I use this type of tomato. I usually use like the big round ones, like the beef eaters, I think they're called. But I find my salsa is often more liquid than I'd like it, so I've decided this year to try this variety of tomato and see if I like the consistency better. So proceed to do this until you've gotten all your tomatoes done. To remove the skins off the tomatoes, you're going to place your tomatoes inside the pot of boiling water. Work in small batches because you don't want to cook your tomatoes. You just want to leave them there for about 30 seconds until the peel starts to come off of the tomato. This is what your tomato is going to look like when the peel starts to come off of it. So this is when you know that it's ready. You need to immediately immerse your tomato into cold water to stop it from cooking and to be able to handle the tomato to remove the peel. Once you have your tomatoes in your cold water, they're going to be really easy to handle. So you just slip the skins right off, and as you can see, it's really easy. They just come right off. Now you're going to want to save the skins of your tomatoes because I will be showing you in a future vlog something amazing that you can do with them. So what you can do with the skins while you wait is that you can freeze them until you're ready to use them. So you proceed to go through this until you've got all your tomatoes done. You need to chop up all your vegetables as well that are going to be going into your salsa. Remember that when you're doing your hot peppers, you need to wear gloves, otherwise this is going to burn, and be careful not to touch your face as well because that could really burn your face, your eyes. So the recipes will say to coarsely chop your vegetables. It's really, I think, a question of preference on how you like your salsa. If you like it really chunky, then you can chop your vegetables bigger. And if you like your vegetables to be not too big, then just cut them finer. I am not a professional chef. I have never taken any kinds of classes on how to, on knife technique. Hopefully no fingers will be lost in the making of this vlog. So I like them fairly coarse, so I'm just going to leave them like that. So you just proceed until you've got all your vegetables chopped up the size you want them. I can feel the people cringing watching me cut my vegetables. I have yet to have lost a finger. So now that we've got all the skins removed from the tomatoes, we need to chop them up. I did finish with all these tomato skins that I'm going to tuck away and put in my freezer until I have time to deal with them. So I think I have more tomatoes than what I really need, so but that's always a good thing when you can. So I will be doing something with those extra tomatoes as well that I will show you. So the first thing to do is to chop up the tomatoes. Funny story. I can laugh about it now, but when I first started making salsa, I used to spend hours just chopping up my tomatoes. And I was talking to a coworker. So I told her, I said, I waste so much time. I really like salsa, the homemade salsa, but it's so time consuming. Chopping up all those tomatoes into small pieces, and she looks at me kind of strangely and was like, so why do you chop up your tomatoes really small when they're going to be cooking down in your sauce? And yeah, so You're always learning as you move into your canning journey. So now, as you can see, I just really cut them up in big chunks because it is true that no matter what size you cut them, they are going to cook down into a sauce. So you just proceed to do this until you've roughly cut up all your tomatoes. And like I said earlier, I decided to go with this variety. I'm really looking forward to seeing what it's going to look like for consistency because I would like to have a little bit of a thicker salsa. You can't add any thickening agents to your salsa like flour or cornstarch to try to make it thicker. So I'm going to try to achieve the results that I'm looking for by using a different variety of tomato. If you just can't let go of your favorite salsa recipe, that's fine, there's no problems, but just freeze it instead. It may change the taste of it a little bit, it may change the consistency or whatnot, but at least you know that you have a safe product when you're eating it. If you do use a different variety of tomato, you're going to see it's going to create a lot more juice than what I've got here. So don't try to make your salsa thicker with a different variety of tomato by discarding the juice, because the juice is important in the acidity of the product. So you can't just dump out the juice to try to make your salsa thicker. So now that I have everything peeled, chopped, and chopped some more, all that's left to do is to throw everything in this pot, well, it's quite a big pot, and cook the salsa. The recipe that I'm following says to cook it for around 30 minutes, so we'll see what the salsa looks like. Just remember to follow the recipe, the instructions that came with the recipe that you chose to make. So let's get that done now. As you can see, I have all my ingredients inside of my pot now. It smells amazing and the colors are incredible. So my salsa is done. It's cooked down really well. I have to say that I do like the consistency of the salsa with this different tomato that I've never used before, the Roma tomato. So I think it'll be a keeper for sure. The one thing that I would do differently though is I would cut it down a little bit more. I wouldn't spend hours cutting up the tomatoes really small, but I would cut them up a little smaller than I did because I did spend some time while it was cooking to try to cut down the tomatoes a little bit so that they would cook down faster and wouldn't be quite so big in the salsa. So that's just the one thing that I would do differently. So now we've got everything, what you hear, the jars rattling behind me, so warming up inside the canners. I've got 2 canners going today because I figure I might have more than one batch, and so to try to make it go a little bit faster, I'm gonna try to do 2 batches at once. And my caps are also heating, my sealing caps are also heating in a pot on the stove. And I have my rings and I have my bottling station all set up. So as usual, I've got my jars heating inside of my pots to stay nice and warm. My salsa is still nice and hot. We try to keep everything as hot as possible. So we're gonna start by filling our jars. So I just got a spoon in here to stir this up to make sure that it stays nicely mixed. I'm going to use a big measuring cup to pour this inside of the bottles. It's probably going to be a little messy. So with this salsa, we need to leave ½ an inch of headspace. So we leave half of an inch on the top of the bottle that's not filled with the salsa. Even if this is really liquid, it's still important to remove the air bubbles as well. And also, as always, to wipe the rim of the jar with plain water, just to make sure that our sealing caps adhere well. Center this on top of the bottle. You're going to take your ring, place it on top, and just twist it until it's fingertip tight, not too tight. Then we're going to take our bottle, return it to the pot, and come back with another hot bottle. So we continue the process until we've worked our way through all our salsa and filled all our bottles. So I have this canner full. So what I do now is I put the heat up on high, and I have to bring this to a good hard rolling boil. I need 1 inch of water on top of the bottles. The processing time for salsa is fairly short. It's only 20 minutes. So as long as I have 1 inch of water on top, I should be fine. Now I do have my bottles inside of my pressure canner, but I'm not pressure canning them. I'm water bath canning them. I'm just using my pressure canner because it's large and I know that I can fit a good number of bottles inside. So that's why I'm using my pressure canner. So one last thing to do is to place the cover on top. This pot is going at a good hard boil. So what we're going to do is we're going to time this for 20 minutes. I am going to lower it a little bit so they don't boil too hard. So the 20 minutes are up. My pint-sized jars have processed for 20 minutes. So now what we need to do is to turn off the heat. I'm going to remove the cover. Be careful because it's really hot. Lots of steam. And we need to leave them there for another 5 minutes. We let them sit in the pot for another 5 minutes before removing them. So now that the 5 minutes are up, we need to carefully remove our jars from the canner. Remember, we need to keep the bottles upright, not tip them from side to side. It could be a little bit tempting because there's some water on the top, but don't tip them towards the side to drain the water off. The water will eventually evaporate off, so don't tip them, leave them alone. You have to remember as well that you need to set your jars somewhere that they're going to remain untouched for 24 hours. And as you can hear, they're already sealing. Listen for the telltale signs or sounds. So our first batch of salsa is done. Now we just need to wait for the second batch to be complete. Batch number 2, complete. So now all we have to do is wait until tomorrow to check to make sure that all the jars have sealed. So 24 hours later, as you can see, I've ended up with a nice batch of salsa. Call me crazy, but I think I may be making another batch tomorrow. It's turned out that good. As usual, remember to remove your rings from on top of your bottles. Don't store them with the rings. Wash them and use them again. Make sure to check your seals. Make sure that all your bottles have properly sealed, that you don't feel the lump on top of your bottles that will tell you that they haven't sealed. And never stack your bottles as well, one on top of the other. Just always leave them in a single layer. You can store your bottles in a clean, dark, and dry space for about up to a year to get the best quality of product. So it's good for about a year. And you should store them between 10 and 21 degrees Celsius or 50 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the optimal temperature. And always remember as well to write on top of your bottles what your product is and the year. And I think even what I did this time is I wrote like 1 for batch 1, and I will make another batch and I'll write batch 2. And just to see, just to make sure that I know which batch I'm eating when I eat them. If you like this vlog, check out my other vlogs. I have different kinds of contents in there, different subjects. Leave me comments in the comment section of things that you'd like to see, and I'll do my best to try to get it done. If you like my channel, subscribe and like, share if you will, and we'll talk again soon.